What's going on, everyone? This is Sheets, and I'm going to be going over the UFC card for this weekend. We're going to be looking at it from a DFS perspective, and it is a remarkable card, both from a talent perspective and from a DFS perspective. Uh, it's a 6 p.m. start time, so it's not exactly conducive to people that go out Saturday evening or they're celebrating Passover, among other things. But nonetheless, from a DFS perspective, it's an extraordinarily good card. So we're going to go over it. First things first, from a, I don't know, from a slate perspective, it's a 13 fight card. So that usually indicates that it's a slate where you can maybe win the 200,000 in the big GPP by yourself without getting too crazy. And we've identified a couple of slates like that over the last month or so. And while we have not been able to identify that lineup, we were at least able to identify the fact that that condition existed for a single lineup to win. That is, I guess, one important step because we have to figure out how chalky we can be or how much funny business we have to entertain with regard to maybe leaving salary on the table or utilizing some of the more complicated and advanced techniques in lineup construction. So you really didn't have to do that over the last couple of weeks. This week, it's close because on the one hand, you have 13 fights, so you would think that that's enough where you could get unique lineups without being too crazy. The problem here is that the main event is a very difficult fade. I mean, you have a 5 round fight, which is perfectly priced, 8,200, 8K, and you have two very active fighters competing. So it's going to be extraordinarily popular and a very difficult fade, which means that it's going to be a little more difficult to win this by yourself. Now, not that we're not going to try, but it's going to involve, doing quite a bit of funny business in the lineup construction, which we're not going to get to today. We're going to get to that tomorrow. We're just going to take a look at the fights and see which are the kind of the good fights to target and the good fighters to target. I guess we should go from the bottom up, and one of the reasons why that works specifically this time is whether it was on purpose or not. Like the UFC has really developed this card for this particular day to really build, not just from a talent perspective, but also from a DFS perspective. And we're going to see why as we kind of go through this. Like this first fight on the card, Haley Cowan and Nora Cornole. Sometimes when you see a live coverage of a big UFC card, you'll wonder like why no one's there for the first fight. I mean, I'm always there for the first fight when I go, but when you watch, you compare the crowd for the first fight to the last one in this particular one. There's going to be plenty of empty seats for the Cornole Haley Cowan fight. It's a very mid-level women's fight, and it doesn't rate to be particularly exciting. And from a DFS perspective, I mean, it's extraordinarily poor. Neither fighter has a good inside the distance line, and neither one is particularly great with the takedowns. So I will say this: I mean, if this does in fact deliver and puts up a big score, somebody is going to be really in business because this fight is going to be almost no owned, and probably for good reason. I mean, there's just so many great opportunities in this card to get upside that I just think that you're really asking for it, wasting some good combinations by playing either of these fighters. So does that mean I'm not going to get to them in 150 max? I usually don't get to zero unless I do that on purpose, which I don't ever do. So maybe I'll get to a couple, but it would only be because I've told the Sims to do its thing. There's no way I would intentionally play this fight. Tracion Gore versus Marco Tulio Silva. So this one is the first of, it's actually a pretty decent inside the distance line on Sylvia. He's minus 360 to win, and his inside the distance line, I think is minus 150. Let me see. It's better than that. It's actually minus one. Yeah, it is minus 150. So that's extraordinarily strong. His price, 9,200. I think it's reasonable. I mean, I definitely think it's reasonable for a minus 150 inside the distance line. Um, you are probably going to need a first round KO. So it's to make optimal on this type of card. So let's see what his first rounds prop is, if that helps. Silva in round one. Well, it's plus 375 by TKO. Here it is. Silvio in round one is plus two. Well, depends on where you look. About plus 250. So I guess that means that 25% of the time, or let's say 30% of the time, he wins in the first round. So if you want to say 25% of the time he's optimal, I guess that makes some sense. So we got to keep that in mind. So this is a 9,200 guy. 25% of the time he does what he needs to do. Um, is he going to be owned 25%? I don't think so. I think he's probably going to be owned a little bit less. And that's not exactly the perfect way to analyze these things, but it's definitely helpful. So I think that Tulio probably is not a great value. Okay, given well, excuse me, I wouldn't say not a great value. I would say that he probably is a pretty good value because he's probably going to be owned less than 27, 28%, which is his odds of winning the first round. But then you have to think, even if he wins in the first round, is that going to be enough? Well, it's kind of hard to say for a $9,200 guy that if he wins in the first round, that's not going to be enough. So we're going to presume that that's the case. We're going to presume that if he wins in the first round, he is, what do you want to say, 75%, 80% to make optimal? So let's say that Tulio is a good play. Okay, we'll leave him right here as a good play. Trayshawn Gore, on the other hand, I don't know. I mean, he'd have to have a pretty good inside the distance line here, and I don't think he has one. Let's see, Gore inside the distance plus 500. Um, well, okay, you know what? We could do the same type of analysis. I mean, he if he finishes this fight, what, 15% of the time, 20% of the time, probably is optimal, and he's going to also be pretty low owned. So this is why, I mean, like in big GPPs and when you're playing 150, probably going to have to get some of this, you know, because this is going to be, I think this is going to be a pretty low owned fight. As I said, people are just getting into the stadium, so to speak. And when I say just getting into the stadium, so to speak, that also means from a DFS perspective. Nobody wants to, shoot their whole, entry fee in the first couple of fights. So these first two fights are usually pretty low owned. And while the Cowan fight was for good reason, I think I'm going to get to probably at least as much as the field on this fight, maybe a little bit more. We'll see. Sumadurgi versus Mitch Raposo. All right. Sumadurgi, his inside the distance line is plus 250. And that's just not going to be good enough. Like the only way I would give him even a second look is if he had the takedown upside. But the reality is that the takedown upside is actually on the other side. So Mitch Raposo is the one that has the takedown upside. So I think that he is the preferred side here. So like he can win this fight and still score enough to make optimal, even without a good inside the distance line, because even though he only had one takedown, he is someone that has quite a few takedowns to his credit. So I think that of these two, I think Raposo would be the more playable DFS play. Not to mention the fact that at 7,300, I mean, it would be nice to get like 100 out of your winner, but you don't have to get 100 out of your winner at 7,300. Although I will say that if in fact he does win, I mean, he's looking at about a 90 ball, right? I mean, he's going to have to get a bunch of takedowns. So I actually like the Raposo side as a preferred play in this fight. And Sumadurshi, I just don't think he's going to get there. Now again, he's going to be very low owned, I imagine, but he just doesn't have the inside the distance line to make this work. Okay, so now we're kind of moving up. We're building for in skill level, we're building in excitement, and this next fight could be a freaking war. So you have Julian Rosa against Darren Elkins. So you look at the inside the distance line, first of all, I imagine that Rosa's got to be minus 110 at least, right? To finish. Not quite. Is he plus 110? So I guess he's not quite as good of a play as Tulio, who's got the minus 150. And I don't think that Julia Rosa is going to be the one with the takedowns. I think if anybody's going to get the takedowns here, it's going to be Elkins. And boy, at 6,800. And listen, this is not the way you're really supposed to play, but Elkins could get takedowns in a loss at 6,800 and really do some business in the optimal. I think it's very possible here. And Elkins, again, he just doesn't stop. 3 takedowns, 5 takedowns, 2 takedowns, 5 takedowns, whatever it is. This is a guy that you want to play in DFS. He just is. And at 6,900, I'm kind of down with this. So I think I would probably play both sides of this fight. Erosa, again, does not have as good of an inside the distance line as Tulio. When without the real takedown upside, he, not in this fight at least, I just think that he kind of is a little bit worse. So I'll play the Tulio. Whereupon, whereas Elkins, yeah, okay, his win odds are not great, but he does have that. First of all, he's gonna score if he wins like 100% of the time, and even if he loses, he's very live. Not to necessarily be in the optimal, but at least be competitive for it. You know, you just never know. Like if all the underdogs lose, and then you're gonna probably need. Here's the problem: you're gonna need one of the last 2 fights to bust. I think. We'll get to lineup construction maybe a little bit today. Um, and those last 2 fights are going to be tough to bust. But if you do get those 2 fights to bust, and then all these no other underdogs win, then you could sneak something like Elkins into the optimal, even if he does lose. So I think this is definitely something we should play. Chase Hooper versus Jim Miller. Okay, 9,600 is a real tough price. But one thing about Chase Hooper, he scores. He is extremely active. He swings hard. He swings often. He goes for takedowns. He goes for subs. He does not let up when he's on top. He goes for ground and pound and all that stuff. So Chase Hooper is an extraordinarily good play here. The only question is going to be if you can get to him. And this is where these lineups with, say, Elkins in them can really help, because let's say you get that Hooper multi takedown and ground and pound and like 135-point victory on DraftKings, you're gonna want it. And so sometimes you might have to punt to get there. So I definitely think Hooper is an amazing play here. What's his inside the distance line? It's probably not that great for some reason, but I mean, either way, it says Hooper inside. It is actually minus 160. So he's got a good inside the distance line, and he's got all kinds of activity in there. So I think he's extremely strong. And Miller, unfortunately, I just don't think he wins often enough here at plus 700. So I'm not going to play. Okay, you have Michael Ozachuk. Oh, did I forget this one? Sorry. I forgot this. Michael Ozachuk versus Cedric Dumas. So Alex Zachuk at 9K, he's going to need about a minus 110 inside the distance line to be, kind of a good play. And I think he's right there. I mean, he's minus, it's close. I mean, plus 105 maybe. So it's a little worse. But again, you're saving 200 or so to get to him. But I still think that between here's the question. Tulio at 9,200 or Olazachuk at 9K. The thing is that Olazachuk has literally no takedowns. Does Tulio have anything? I guess not, huh? Although maybe we don't know. Let's look at some other two. Let's look at some other Tulio results for a minute. We'll get back to the OSHF fight. No, I mean no subs. I mean he's just not going to get any of it. So they're both very similar as far as their path to victories go. And I guess the price kind of evens them out a little bit. So I think Tulio, Olazechuk are very similar. And it's also they both are probably going to require a first round KO. Okay. So let's take a look, for example, at Olazechuk's first round KO prop here. Plus 300-ish. So he's being priced, I mean, like sort of efficiently to Tulio, but I think Tulio is still just a little bit better. I don't think the 200 is, I think it's worth the extra 200 to make up those metrics. Dumas on the other side, I mean, sure. Here's the thing about Dumas. What's good about Dumas is his money line. I mean, he's only a plus 160 or so favorite, and he's what 7,200. I guess that's similar to Raposo though, right? It's 73, 74, whatever. So yeah, so no bargains here. And this Silva line is ridiculous. This Silva price is too small at 9K, 9,200. It's got a minus 365 win rate compared to say, oh, Zachuck was like minus 190. So yeah. So let's keep Tulio at the top of the leaderboard, so to speak. All right. So as I was saying, Dumas is just a play. You know what I mean? He's probably priced sort of efficiently. Oh, Zachuck's not going to be particularly popular, so you're not going to get a big bit of leverage playing Dumas. So he's just a play that you'll probably get to in some 150 max builds when you run the Sims, but he's not somebody I would play on purpose. All right, we did the Arosa fight, we did the Jim Miller fight. Now we're really getting in there. You have now a wild one really between Verna Jandaroba and Zhao Xiaonan. If Xiaonan is going to win, it's going to look just like her last fight against Tabitha Ricci, where she can just stuff the takedowns, keep it on the feet, and outstrike Jandaroba. Like that. That's what her win condition kind of looks like. Um, Jandarova, she's going to be going for takedowns. Uh, she got a nice sub win over Amanda Lemos over here. She got a nice win over Lupito Godinez. She not only gets takedowns, but she gets reversals. I'm not worried about reversals here. But I will say this: she doesn't exactly go to work when she's made her takedowns. Okay, she kind of lays on and kind of hunts for that sub, sort of, which is okay. But I'd like to see if I'm going to play someone who's a grappler, I would like to see more strikes. And so normally I would say, oh, it doesn't make a difference at 8,300. I think it is going to make a difference on this card. I think that I mean, when you compare her to, for example, Pimblett, even, or I mean, certainly the main event. I mean, it is possible that she wins without scoring all that well. But I do think that Jiaonan is probably a toss. I think if she wins, I really don't think she scores that well. I think what people might be remembering, and which is certainly reasonable, is this first round KO over Jessica Andrade. But there's no other knockouts in her resume, right? So she really has no upside, honestly. So I don't think I'm going to play much of her at all. All right. Sean Woodson versus Danny Ige. This is when this one we kind of take a break from the at least from the good DFS plays. This is going to be a striking battle where it's going to be a battle of ranges here. So Sean Winston's going to try to like win by death of a thousand cuts. Trying to keep Danny Ige at range, get his volume in, and walk out of there with a victory. And Danny Ige is going to be hunting for a little bit more. So I think that in DFS, you should either fade or play Ige. I don't see a world where Sean Woodson is playable. His inside the distance line is going to be extraordinarily poor. He has no takedowns. This is going to be it's going to be a fight that plays out on the feet, I believe. And you look at some of these inside the distance line. Woodson's like plus 1,000. Like Ige is the plus 300. He's the side if you're going to play this. So let's put him in. It's definitely worth trying. If he wins, I mean, I think it's going to be by knockout. No. Anyway, let's move on. Dominic Reyes versus Nikita Krylov. All right, this could be violent. Both these fighters definitely like to bring it. Let's take a look at this inside the distance line here. We have Krylov inside plus one, like basically minus 110. Reyes inside is really poor. I didn't even see that. Krylov, this is a big number for an $8,800 fighter to be minus 110 inside. I don't know why I want to play Reyes here. I mean, okay, so let's talk about this for a second. So I was actually at this fight where he lost to Ryan Spann, and he looked really bad. And he took like 18 months off, and he's come back a completely changed man. You know what I mean? It's freaking crazy. This guy was supposed to be the nuts. Uh, he fought John Jones really closely, for example. And since he's come back, he's done nothing. He's done nothing but put up numbers. Um, I'm trying this. I don't care. I'm trying this. I'm probably going to play both sides of this. This is going to be one of three fights. I'm probably going to lock in. I don't know how I don't play this. Okay, here's another one. Again, this is what happens. You go up the card and you get all these real exciting fights, and you have this very binary fight here between John Silva and Bryce Mitchell. You have the John Silva side. He likes getting he gets knockdowns and KOs and things like that. And you know what? Bryce Mitchell tends to get knocked down and KO'd. You know, he got KO'd in like 2 seconds by Josh Emmett. He got actually subbed by Tapori after getting beat up on the feet. Um, so so on the Silva side, his path to victory is pretty clear. Just knock him out. However, Bryce Mitchell is going to be going for a ton of takedowns, and John Silva, his takedown defense, it's just not been tested. I don't believe. He's been done nothing but basically face strikers here. So here's the way you have to look at this fight. Like if Bryce Mitchell wins, like what does that look like? What that looks like is you're going to want him. You know, at 7,100, what's his money line even? It's only plus 180. You know what I mean? So like 33% of the time, he's in the optimal. Really, I would say. Remember, everybody hates him too, so he's not getting a decision anyway, unless it's a real dominant one. And if what does a Bryce Mitchell dominant decision look like? That looks like 110 points. It looks like 6 takedowns, 9 minutes of control time, whatever. Or who knows, maybe a sub. Maybe that super sneaky optimal late second round sub after 5 takedowns and 9 minutes of control time for the big 125 or something like that. So yeah, I think both these fighters certainly play. You have to play these guys. So this is what's cool about this card. You can kind of dance around some of these, and then when you get to the end, you gotta play this Krylov. You gotta play this Sean Silva fight, and you certainly have to play this next fight. So I believe that this is the fight that is mandatory. Okay, these guys are just gonna bring it. Okay. Well, forget these guys. Chandler just produces and encourages fantasy points every single time he's on the floor. Um, he's going to come right after Patty Pimblett. Patty Pimblett is going to try to go for takedowns and get subs. And you have Pimblett inside at minus 120 at only 8,400. I mean, that is like almost a theoretical lock. And as such, you have incredible leverage behind him with Chandler at 7,800, who's going to bring the heat also. This fight is, I think, almost mandatory that you get 100%. Okay. There's just no way. It's listen, and I don't mind if this one's particularly popular. We did it with the Torres Dober fight. That freaking delivered. Some of these fights you just have to respect, and I think this is the one. So I think that you have to play both of these guys. And in the main event, now by the way, if you wanted to, like I said before, in other videos, if you want to get somewhat different, you could play Chandler, okay, and then leave 600 on the table. Basically, try to confuse the optimizer into thinking that, whoa, I got 8,400 left. Why don't I play Pimblett? Well, if all the optimizers are doing that, you could play Chandler and get extra unique. Now, there's a problem with that, obviously. So if you're going to leave 600 on the table, what you're doing is you're depriving yourself of moving, say, from, I don't know, from lineups with Woodson to lineups to Silva. You know what I mean? That's a big gap. So I don't know if I would do that on this particular card. There's such a big gap between some of these 86, 8,700 guys and these 9,200 guys that extra 400 will be able to afford you. Okay, and in Volkanovski Lopes, like I said before, I mean, this is perfectly priced, and you have both these fighters can do a lot. You could argue all day of whether Lopes is going to be able to go 5 rounds because he's never done it before, and whether Volk is 38, whether he's got it in him to carry this out over 5 rounds, whatever. Doesn't matter. Both these fighters have 5 rounds to work with, and they have big, good skill sets. This fight is just very difficult to keep off of your lineups. So, which one do I like? I don't know. They're the same. They're the same play. Not the same play. Because if Lopes wins, it's more likely I guess he finishes early, which scores a lot. But it doesn't matter because if Volk wins, it's going to be late or by decision, which means he's going to score a lot because you can have 5 rounds to rack up fantasy points. So I think that both these fighters should probably have almost identical median projection. They should. I can't imagine projecting one over the other, really. I guess you would have to say Volk should have the higher projection because, well, his ceiling has got to be higher, right? So Lopes, what are Lopes' path to victory? He can get a first round KO. What does that look like? 100, 110? But if Volk really puts it on him over 5 rounds, including takedowns and all this stuff, like Volk can get like some of these scores he's put up even. I mean, he can get like this, like 135, 133, 130. I mean, like these are legit numbers that he could put up here. So I guess Volk has to be the better play. But there's no way I'm locking in one side of this. So you pick your favorite percentages, but I think that you should be playing this. So I guess in summary, I mean, let's look at this again now that we've kind of gone through all this. Oh, I forgot one. I can't believe I did this. Yair Rodriguez versus Freire. I guess the reason I didn't think about this too much is I think this one's also kind of a fade. Yair at 8,700. Remember, think about the other fighters that we've talked about so far. At 8,700, his inside the distance line it's like plus 280. You know what I mean? Like compared to, say, Pimblett, who's like 8,400 minus 110. You just can't play Rodriguez in this type of environment. So I definitely would probably fade that fight. So to recap again, Volk, Lopes, Pimblett, Chandler, bang, bang. You know what I mean? And what's cool about that is you're in it right to the end. It's like you know that you're going to have two fights left to go. Maybe you're not in it until the end because other people have the same things, but nonetheless, I mean, you definitely have to lock in those two fights, I think. Um, then Mitchell Silva, you could lock that in if you feel like it. Reyes Krylov, the Woodson Ige fight is just going to be a fade unless you want to play Ige. The Jandiroba Janan fight, oh boy, I just don't know if the upside is really there for Jandiroba here with her you know, lack of strikes. She's, I don't know. Hooper, great play. Rosa Elkins, well, man, we totally forgot about that one. It's been so long. Rosa's probably not great, but I have to include Elkins in my player pool. Olazechuk, just okay. No to Sumaderji. Raposo, sure. Tulio, we've talked about a lot. We like that. And I don't know how I get to the Cornole fight. I mean, given everything that I've said. So what does this look like? Let's have some fun here. Let's just say that we played the most expensive of these two. Let's say we played Pimblett and Volk. And then let's say, could you play Hooper in this variation? See, this is the thing you totally can. Like you could play Hooper in this variation. And then what kind of underdogs would you need to play? Like it would have to be something like a Raposo or a Mitchell. Nothing wrong with this, right? Something like that. So you can play your Chase Hooper if you want to. And that's kind of the lesson here. And then who's it? Ige I was going to put in this other kind of underdog. I mean, this is not bad, something like that. So yeah, so if you start with these two fights, you could play whatever combination you want of these two fights with Hooper, for example, and you could almost. Who's the other 9,200 guy we like? We liked Silva or even Tulio. Like you could do that. Where's Raposo? Like for example, you know what I mean? Something like that. Um, these last two fights tonight really open up a whole bunch of possibilities. Um, okay, that's going to do it. I am going to do a lineup construction video hopefully tomorrow, and that's going to do it. Good luck, everybody.